Hey, this is Ewan Blakey, and with Christy, my wife, we're the pastors of Oasis Church, and this is our podcast. I wanted to thank you for joining us today. I hope this inspires you. I hope it builds your faith. I hope it gives you perspective to see God is moving in your life. Enjoy the message.
Well, we've kicked off 2026, guys. Can't believe it's 2026. What on earth? That's crazy. But 2026 with the most incredible series called Sent. And I think it's just the perfect way to start a new year. Sometimes we can get sort of caught up in our own world a little bit, but we need that reminder that we're actually on mission. We're here for a purpose, and so this series is designed to remind us that we're disciples of Jesus. We're the sent ones, and we're not just to sit on the sidelines, but we're to be carriers of the kingdom, bring the kingdom wherever we go, and spread the gospel. Right? Yes. Amen. Well, a couple of weeks ago, Pastor Ewan, he introed the series with talking about, he reminded us that we're all those carriers of the gospel, and that faith is something that gets passed on from one person to another. Isn't that beautiful? It's often not just this isolated encounter. That's not how God intended it. It's something that gets passed on from one person to another. And then Matt spoke last week, and he reminded us that there's two key responsibilities that we carry as believers, and the two things are to bring the people into the kingdom, because we want them to know Jesus, right? Yeah? And you're going to have to work a little bit harder. Come on, give me some feedback. Yep. And to build people in the kingdom. Two things. And I loved that for Matt, this wasn't just theory. It wasn't just something that he'd read somewhere. It wasn't just something that he'd thought about. This was something that his dad had passed on to him, had landed for him, had somehow stuck for him. But that's that passing of faith again, that passing from one generation to another. And that's really tapping into where I want to pick up this morning, which is zoning in on one particular part of our assignment as sent disciples of Jesus, which is that we are sent to our family. Yay! How beautiful were Sarah and Anaya's testimonies? Hey, so amazing. Yeah, let's give them another clap. Girls, thank you for sharing so beautifully. Thank you for sharing your hearts and what God's been doing within you. You know, like what God is doing in our Next Gen ministry at the moment is just so beautiful. He is just working. So this message will hopefully tap into that a little bit more and push us on, stir us up and push us on in that space as well. So, but when we hear the word family, sent to our family, this word family can often mean a lot of different things for people, and it can be a really warm word, or it can be something that brings up a bit of pain. We all sort of look at this. It's quite complex. Family can be like, yay, awesome, or it can be like, oh, family. And we can also think about like the kids that we're directly raising, or the teens that we're raising, or hopefully not the adults that we're raising, but like, you know, the people that we're raising. Or it can also be, we can also think of our siblings, our parents, and as well the family history and our past that we didn't get to choose. You know, sometimes we just inherit stuff, right? Family, it's complex. But here's the truth. Grab this. Every one of us has a family assignment. I'm going to say it again. Every one of us has a family assignment. So teens, don't just check out. Grandparents, don't just check out. This message is for every single one of us in the room. We all have a part to play in this family assignment. God has a family assignment for each of us. And when I was preparing for this morning, I felt like the Lord was showing me that family mission has two directions. One mission to spread the gospel and bring the kingdom. That we're all after the one mission, right? But two different directions for family mission. So it's got our roots and we've got our legacy. One mission, two directions. We're sent to honour and bring hope to our roots, the family that we come from. And we're sent to steward our legacy, the people and the family around us that we're shaping. Two directions, one mission. So this first direction that we're going to unpack this morning, it's all about our roots. We're sent to the family that we're born into. It's about our history. It's about the relationships that are around us that are already established. Some of them that we most of them that we didn't choose. But the thing is that long before God sends us anywhere or gives us any type of mission, we are born into a family. He's placed us in a family. And, it's by no mistake. Before the beginning of time, he predestined that we would be in the family that we're in. It's not a mistake. And whether we like it or not, whether we look upon our family that we were born into with fondness or with pain. What was that? Oh, yes, contempt. Whatever way we look upon our family, that's not a mistake. It was actually God's intention. It may not have been his intention that it looked the way it did. But it was his intention that we were placed with those people for a reason. So how does this fit into everything that we're going to talk about? Well, in the New Testament, we see a couple of moments where Jesus heals someone and then sends them back to their family to share. In Mark 5, Jesus is with his disciples and he crosses a lake and he immediately encounters a man who is completely demon-possessed. He's being tormented. He's living in the tombs and he's totally isolated. He's apparently not clothed. And he's just he's unreachable. He can't be restored by the people around him. He's kind of a lost cause. But then Jesus, he meets this man right at the shores as he arrives at the other side of the lake, and Jesus restores him completely. He drives out the demons into a herd of pigs. He drives them out, and it says that he's found clothed and in his right mind. He's set completely free. Jesus. Beautiful. Mark 5:18-20 says, as Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. But Jesus did not let him. But he said, go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. This man who had been demon-possessed and all of a sudden set free, he wanted to just drop everything and go and follow Jesus. We would normally applaud that. We'd normally say, yes, do it. But for some reason, Jesus says, no, go home. Go home. And it begs the question of why, But through this man that Jesus sends back to his own family, through him, people are amazed, and we can presume that there's a transference of faith, that they're seeing the transformation within him, and then they're telling him, he's then telling them about the guy that set him free. There's a transference of faith, and you know what? It says that he goes to this place and tells them in the Decapolis. Now, the Decapolis actually means the 10 cities. So he's not just going to one place, but he's going to the 10 cities. And the Decapolis was full of Gentiles. So he's not going back to Israelite people who know God and know the Messiah, that the Messiah is coming. He's going, and he's one of the first ones to spread the good news of Jesus to the Gentiles. What? But when we read this story of this demon-possessed man, when we read this story of this man going back to his hometown, we can just gloss past it and go, oh yeah, awesome, he went back to his hometown. But when you actually stop and think about it for a minute, I think that would have been actually really hard. I think that would have been really hard for him to go back to his own town, his hometown, back to his family. He was the local crazy guy, you guys. He was living in the tombs completely naked. He was the local crazy guy. They'd written him off. He had to go back and face his family, probably facing some shame. It would have been a heck of a lot easier for him to just drop everything and follow Jesus. Yet he went back. It's God's intention. It was God's intention to use him to bring transformation and restoration to his community. There's power in our testimonies, you guys. There's power in these testimonies. There's power in the testimony to our families, and we've got to start believing that there's enough power in our testimony and the transformation that God has done in us to transform the lives of the people around us. We've got to start believing that. But it can be uncomfortable, right? It can be uncomfortable. It's easy to talk about Jesus in the walls of the church. That's easy. But it can be uncomfortable to go back to our families, back to our homes, back to our friends, to the people that we know, and talk to them about Jesus. That can be really uncomfortable. But it's exactly what we're called to. God's not a God of comfort. He actually sends us the comforter because he's going to make us uncomfortable. I have a lot of family who don't walk with Jesus, and even more extended family who aren't believers. But there are 3 people in my family, in my sort of immediate family, siblings, dads, and whatever, there's 3 people who are particularly on my heart to pray for and to have bold conversations with when the Spirit leads. And to be honest, there's been seasons, we've had a relationship for a long time. There's been seasons where I've just gone, no, you're never going to change. You're never going to change. Or I've grown complacent and a bit discouraged in seeing that change happen. But over the last couple of years, I've felt this real fire stir in me to win their hearts for the Lord, to see them transformed. And God is passionately pursuing them. He desires them completely. He longs for them, and he's chasing them down, and I have a part to play. But the two things that keep coming back to me when I think about these three men that desperately need Jesus are, how much do I really care about their destiny? How much do I really care about where they're going? How much do I really care about their freedom? How much do I really care? More than my pride? I hope so, but it's convicting. And the other thing that keeps coming back to me is, if not me, then who? If not me, then who? God has placed us together as family for a purpose. And if not me, then who? How? He's given me freedom already. How dare I not open my mouth and share the best news of all just because I'm a little bit afraid of what they might think about me? If not me, then who? You know, the trouble is that families are complicated. They're messy. I'm sure for the demon-possessed guy, it wasn't easy to go back. And I'm sure for all of us, at times, that it's not easy to go back. There's often stuff that we need to work through before we can go and share with our family. Maybe there's some restoration that needs to happen, or some forgiveness. You know, sometimes mission looks like a repaired relationship. Sometimes mission looks like a repaired relationship, like going to your family and making amends. What if the most powerful sermon that your family could ever hear was a healed relationship? What if they never made it into the walls of the church, yet the sermon that you preached to them through your actions was by loving them in a healed relationship? You know, it's hard to be the one that goes first. It's hard to be the one that goes first. Especially when quite often there's more hurt that's been done to us than through us. It's really hard to go first. I've got one of those that I've got to keep going after, even though it's hard to go first. But you know what? We're followers of Jesus. Who said it? Who's our best example? Who laid his life down for those who betrayed him, knowing that they would betray him. And the very nature of Jesus is right in us, right? If we're believers, that his nature is within us. And he has given us the ability to go first, to lay ourselves down for the sake of healed relationship. But it's by his power alone. It's not something that we can just work ourselves into. We might need to get some help. We might need to work through some forgiveness. We might need some inner healing and deliverance. There might be stuff that we need to do. But it's by his power that we can be the ones that go first. We're sent to our roots, you guys. It's not a mistake. And the second direction in our family mission is about legacy. Stewardship of what's in our hand and what's to come, what's coming after us, and even what's going to carry on long after we're gone. We're sent to the family that we're raising. You know, a lot of us are in the season of raising young families. John and I are clearly very much in the season of raising young families. 5 more weeks to go, you guys. We can do it. Woo! But whether you're right in the thick of it with parenting, or you're past the stage of raising littles, or you don't have biological kids of your own, this is for everyone. We all have a part to play. We all have a part to play in raising the next generation. It doesn't just fall on the parents. You know, if we look at the Bible as a whole, we see that God is a generational God. That's his nature. He calls himself the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that's not just a quirky thing that he does. He's calling himself that because he is the God of generations. He's a generational God, and he passes. It's in his nature. It's in how he's wired things. And in the DNA of faith is that faith is passed down from one generation to the other. And it's a beautiful thing as we see faith expanding and the kingdom growing. But we also see warning in the Bible that if we neglect to pass faith on, that it can have consequences. Faith must be passed on. Judges 2:10 says, after that whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. This is a sobering passage. What it's saying is that, you know, this whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors. They all died. And then the generation that came through didn't know the Lord. The generation that had died had neglected to tell the next generation. Maybe they told them, but it wasn't in them. They'd neglected to tell the next generation about God, so the next generation that came through didn't know God. We have a responsibility to pass on the word of the Lord to the next generation. It's our responsibility. We can't just rely on the person next to us to do it. Because if everyone's relying on the person next to us to do it, we're going to end up in a pickle. This is how God designed it. That faith would be carried from one generation to another. But what does this really look like for us in a practical sense? Practical people, right? Well, faith is often caught before it's taught. I'll say it again. Faith is often caught before it's taught. Our kids are watching us. They are. They're catching stuff. Deuteronomy 6 paints a beautiful picture of the kind of discipleship that God intended for our children. Deuteronomy 6, 4-9 says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them to your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates." You know, there's so much to love about this passage. It's a beautiful passage, and it's talking about the doing of life, the everyday stuff, and the faith just being in that. You know, it's not structured, but it's the whole of life. But you know, the one thing that really stands out to me in this passage is that it starts with us. We are to love the Lord our God with all that we are. We are the ones that need to bind it on our foreheads. We are the ones that need to surround ourselves with the truths and embody embody it and dwell in it. We're the ones. We're the ones. Then it can be impressed on our children. They're learning from us. You know, this passage, it's just got that impress them on your children, just that one time in there, but the rest of the time it's talking about what we're doing, you know, and I just think that it really starts with how we are. How many of you know that our kids our kids are like little imitators of us? They copy us. And sometimes that's really cute and really good. And when they're like doing something that you think, oh, that's beautiful, I taught them that. That's really sweet. But then there's those moments when you go, oh my goodness, I taught them that. We're all laughing because we know that our kids are like little mirrors. Sometimes they react in a certain way, and it's like, oh, I reacted like that just the other day there, and they're like a mirror. And not only do we have to deal with the issue that's right in front of us, but we've also got to deal with the issue that's been revealed in ourselves. Our kids are watching us and copying us. They're learning from us, whether we realize it or not. But the thing is that when we lean into this beautiful thing of our kids imitating us, we can lead our children into becoming mini disciples of Jesus. Not disciples in the future, but disciples of Jesus now. Disciples of Jesus now. We're sent to our family, to the next generation, to prepare them to be sent. Psalm 127, 3-5 says, "Children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them." This passage is saying that our children in the next generation are like arrows in the hands of a warrior. But, you know, arrows, they don't start out ready. They don't start out as arrows. They have to be shaped and formed and crafted. It takes time and intention and care. But then at the right time, they can be aimed and released. Not to carry our name, but to carry the kingdom further than we could possibly imagine. If we train our kids well in prayer, in truth, in identity, our ceiling becomes their floor, and our legacy goes far further than our lives ever will. But we've got to build into them. And it's not just parents, it's the whole church. So how can we build into the next generation? Well, hopefully I'm going to zoom through this because apparently we're almost out of time. But I've got a few quick tips for you. And you're probably aware of a lot of them already. But sometimes we just need a reminder. How can we build into the next generation? Well, prayer. Our kids these days, they're facing